there's been a really interesting wind coming out of, probably should check this beforehand. There's a really interesting wind coming out of uh, Brazil, potentially. Let me just get one thing straight. There we are. Yeah, just make sure. Yeah, there's a really interesting wind coming out of Brazil. So, Lula de Silva has been let out of prison. It was realized, understood in the same way that, we could look at it and be like, yeah, that looks a little dodgy. That looks like they're just railroading the guy. Well, come to find out, they were railroading the guy. And the reason was pretty obvious. It was plainly apparent. Lula was dramatically popular. And if he was running against Bolsonaro or pretty much any other candidate, he was going to win, meaning the Workers' Party was going to win. And so you had this situation where Lula was basically railroaded in this kind of political corruption scam called car wash, where Moro was basically paid off by being brought into the government after everything took place, after Lula was taken out of commission and after Bolsonaro won the race. I mean, it was clear. Some of the things these guys were saying to one another made it clear that there was, let's say, malfeasance going on as opposed to somebody who's nobly carrying out the law, which is the way he tried to act Car Wash or Operation Car Wash was. He basically got rid of political enemies. Well, Lula is not just out now. Today, a judge, out of the blue apparently, annulled the 4 cases that were against him. Now, this is dramatic and big, right? And this is, let's see, right here. El País is being translated into English. So if it's a little weird, that's why. Judge of the Supreme Court of Brazil annuls the sentence against Lula de Silva, who may be a candidate for the elections. Notice, that was so important. They put that in the title. So right here, Judge for the Supreme Court of Brazil, Edson Fachin, has decided this Monday in an unexpected decision that the court has tried former Lula de Silva was not competent and consequently annulled 4 processes, I think that's trying to say cases, in which the veteran party leader, Workers' Party, was convicted of corruption. Moro, that ran the court in Curitiba, okay, like I said, some of these are going to be mistranslations, but look, what this boils down to is that some of the cases would have blocked his ability to run for office. Now, because they got rid of all the cases, his ability to run for office is now intact, which means that in the upcoming elections in 2022, Lula could run. Lula is still popular. It became entirely and crystal clear that Lula had been railroaded, and not just had been railroaded, it was crystal clear to the public at that point. Glenn Greenwald has a lot of accolades for that one because it was a lot of his reporting that was able to get Lula and the leaks that he was able to get out of prison, and not just out of prison at this point, free to run for office. Now, Lula does have some age on him. He's 75 years old. But regardless of the age on him, could he win? And if we're talking about an opposition to Bolsonaro, well, he would have beat him the last time if he was able to have a fair race. I think it's also interesting, though, that the judge even did that. Like, you must understand, the first time around, in order to get Lula out of commission, the judges were being threatened by the military that they needed to take a particular action versus another action. And that even came out. The judge basically was like, look, I felt threatened. I felt like, this was something that we were pressured to do. All of these things took place in order to get Lula put in prison for that time frame and to keep him out of the political life. If a judge is doing this, what does it mean? Does it mean that Bolsonaro's hold over this kind of political system is falling apart? Does it mean that the COVID-19 thing with all of the deaths kind of exposed the government as being remarkably inept to even do the most basic of things like keeping a citizenry alive? What does it mean? Or does it mean that this judge is just brave enough to say, we want something else? I would say this. At this point, it's clear that he had been railroaded. And so whatever you want to say about it, it seems like it's just the right thing. And if he runs again, Look, it doesn't matter one iota what I think. I'm not in Brazil, but Lord knows he would have my support. He's a hell of a lot better than the person who's there now. Lula De Silva. Good news. Good news. Very good news. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. And I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks, guys. If you... Oh, by the way, make sure you subscribe. The weird stuff happens sometimes where people get unsubscribed. And that seems to be something that Google is doing now, with some kind of algorithm or something that it's using. So definitely make sure you're subscribed. This is dramatically good news, though. I followed this case from the beginning, when it first started. And at the time, it was like, oh, they're railroading him. They're railroading him. But the wild part is, there's nothing... Clearly, we can't do anything. And Lula made the point that not only was he being railroaded in this kind of legal sense, where it's selective justice being used in a way to go after one political opponent and not somebody else, that the press basically codified it. So what started off as something that was a shady investigation against them that became a political witch hunt in order to take away a political opponent, the press turned around and basically said, fair game. Fair game. They were wrong. They were dramatically wrong. And not just they were wrong, the Ministry of Justice committed that injustice and used the military on some level in order to help it out. This, however, is a win. The thing is, you can never balance the scales. How long did he stay in prison? And moreover, not just how long did he stay in prison, what did it mean for him to be in prison as opposed to being president, which he probably should have been because he would have won that race. And if they would have had to deal with COVID versus Bolsonaro, who didn't give a shit about the people with the COVID crisis. These things have consequences. Like, share, subscribe.